So,
all right, we've already formed a quorum. Let's start. This is the meeting of the panel on constitutional affairs. Item 1 on the agenda, information papers issued since the last meeting. After the last meeting, we've not issued any information paper. Item 2 on the agenda, items for discussion at the next meeting. Please invite the administration's representatives to come in.
First
of all, I'd like to welcome the representatives from the administration, with Mr. Raymond Tam, the Secretary, Ms. Chan King-yu, the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Lau Kong-wah, the Under-Secretary, Mr. Gordon Leung, the Deputy Secretary, and Ms. Charmaine Lee, also the Deputy Secretary. Our next meeting will be held on the 18th of February, a Monday. Apparently, you would like to discuss 2 items. Would you please tell us which 2 items you would like to raise at the next meeting? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the meeting on the 28th of February, we suggest that the panel can discuss 2 issues. One is the UN Human Rights Council Universal Periodic Review of the Hong Kong SAR. The United Nations Human Rights Council will carry out the 2nd Universal Periodic Review of China in October this year. And Hong Kong is responsible for drafting the part on the Hong Kong SAR. We intend that from the 1st of February to the 8th of March, we'll consult the public on the part to be drafted by us for incorporation into China's report. When public consultation starts, we'll provide the draft outline for the Hong Kong SAR for reference. Therefore, we suggest that at the next meeting of the panel on the 18th of February, the panel can give its views to us on that. The second issue that we propose to discuss is the second report to be submitted to the United Nations in relation to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We carried out public consultation and also consulted the panel. The combined 3rd and 4th reports had been submitted to the United Nations. And we suggest that the contents of the report be discussed at the next meeting. Now, 2 items have been proposed. Ms. Emily Lau told me that she would like to raise something about the United Nations Human Rights Committee in relation to the 3rd scrutiny of our report, that is to be held from the 12th to the 13th of March. Ms. Emily Lau, would you please elaborate on why we should listen to more views at this juncture before the United Nations publishes its reports? Mr. Chairman, this is not the first time we do this. In the past, when the UN committee convened a meeting, we would call a meeting to invite deputations to come. Some deputations would go to Geneva and submit information to this panel to assist us in our scrutiny work. Apart from myself, I believe, Chairman, you've also received some letters from the deputations which would like to come and air their views. So it's very simple, Mr. Chairman. This has been done in the past. I don't know why you're so hesitant this time. Last time I raised this issue, but you told me not to raise that issue at that time. Just like C.Y. Leung, you said that there's still a lot of time. In fact, there's not much time. Are you suggesting that we shouldn't call such a meeting? No, usually we would await the scrutiny work of the UN committee to finish work before coming back to this panel for follow-up. Well, of course, when they come back, we'll have to discuss. If we are to discuss before the UN committee has its meeting, since we've already had one discussion, I asked whether you suggest that we discuss again before they convene their meeting. Mr. Chairman, the administration submitted the report quite some time before, and the administration should update information submitted. The UN committee should be very focused in its discussion. In fact, lay organizations have always been convening meetings to discuss the issue. So, Mr. Chairman, I hope that you can agree to this proposed meeting so that we can have some time to handle the issue. Well, if we want to include the consultation suggested by Ms. Emily Lau, can you postpone any of the two items proposed by you? Because it may be rather difficult to arrange for 3 items to be discussed with deputations. Well, Mr. Chairman, just now I mentioned the second Universal Periodic Review. Since we have to attend the UN Human Rights Council meeting in October, time is more pressing for that item. If the panel deems it necessary, the discussion on the Convention of the Rights of the Child can be postponed to March. I'd like to add that concerning what Ms. Emily Lau raised just now in relation to the UN Convention, previously we had 2 stages covering the draft outline and the discussion at this meeting after the SARG had published its draft report. And in the past, after the October meeting, we should come back again to report to the panel. If in the interim the panel would like to listen to the latest views of the deputations, I of course respect members' views. And if necessary, my colleagues can sit in to listen to the deputations. Ms. Emily Lau? Well, if the Convention on the Rights of the Child can be postponed, well, in fact, Mr. Chairman, the 2 issues are about the same thing. The March UN meeting and the October UN meeting will discuss a number of issues, including the ICCPR and these 2 conventions. Other colleagues, do you have any comments? Otherwise, like what Ms. Emily Lau suggested, Ms. Ito, well, it's all right, Mr. Chairman, if you agree that we handle this item at the next meeting, then I don't need to speak. Because if I am to speak, I only tell members that it's necessary to discuss this item. In the past, we did have supplementary reports. And after the first draft, up to the time of the hearing, new issues may emerge in society. And the additional meeting will be assisting those attending the Geneva meeting in their discussions, because we'll say whatever we wish. Well, we'll definitely be crying out, even though there's consultation. But at least if we have a meeting, you know in advance what we're going to say. Okay, in that case, we adjust the items for discussion for the next meeting. The first item will be that proposed by Ms. Emily Lau. That is the 3rd report from the SARG. We'll listen to public views. And then concerning the draft outline to be submitted to the UN Human Rights Council, we'll also listen to public views. So if there's no objection, we'll have those 2 items. And the Convention on the Rights of the Child will be postponed to March. We'll publish a notice on our website. Mr. Lee Chak-yan. Mr. Chairman, concerning the discussion items, last time I sent you a letter, Chairman, in relation to the roles and functions of the CPU. And later I received a message in which Mrs. Carrie Lam answered on behalf of the CPU. That is, the roles and functions of the CPU had not been changed, so it's not necessary to have a discussion. I do not agree with Mrs. Carrie Lam, because in the Public Service Panel paper, it said that the roles and functions, the terms of reference of the CPU would be changed. So I'm very dissatisfied. The duties, functions, etc. have to be explained to us. I'd like to know the new duties and functions of the CPU. You know, at present, the CPU is to grasp all the powers related to personnel appointment, for example. So the terms of reference of the CPU will be very huge. And last time I also requested a special discussion in this panel on the CPU's terms of reference. Well, on your request, I did talk to the CS1 administration, who told me that there's no change to the terms of reference of the CPU, and the same was discussed in the House Committee, and she had nothing to supplement. And at the LegCo meeting, you also queried her. Whether or not she responded on that day, I do not know. Perhaps you should try to ask an oral question or written question in the LegCo meeting to see how she will answer. Well, the oral question time is very short. The Public Service Panel discussed the item because of creation of posts. It's not appropriate to discuss the item at the Public Service Panel. It should be the terms of reference of this panel. Well, because that paper was not responsible by Mr. Raymond Tam, and our corresponding department is the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau. Well, different issues may have different corresponding bureaus or departments. We can invite Mrs. Carrie Lam to come. Well, I will reflect your views to Mrs. Carrie Lam again first. Well, I don't want to wait till they go to the ESC and the Finance Committee. The other members have not voiced any objection. I believe this is also the wish of other members. Well, but in fact, not many members have expressed their wish. Well, Mr. Chairman, I agree. Maybe every member should shout out to state their position. Mr. Wong Kwok King? Originally, I did not intend to speak, but Mr. Lee Chak-yan was saying that silence will be considered as acquiescence. Well, I don't think it's really necessary to discuss the item here. Well, it's for you to rule, Mr. Chairman. Is the issue urgent? Do we really need to call a meeting on that? Maybe we should ask for a paper from the administration first before assessing whether it's necessary to have another discussion. Otherwise, this member would like to discuss this, that member would like to discuss that. How will you arrange the agenda items? So, Mr. Chairman, would you please make a ruling? I do not agree with Mr. Lee Chak-yan that silence is equivalent to consent. Well, is it that you do not agree to discussing the terms of reference, duties and functions of the CPU? Well, I'll pass Mr. Lee Chak-yan's query to the CS4 administration in the hope that she'll give us a written reply, and then I'll further consider. Well, I saw a number of hands. I think members are interested in the next item on the agenda. That is the content of the policy address. So let's not waste time. Let's proceed to item 3 on the agenda, briefing on the Chief Executive's 2013 policy address.
Apart from the policy address briefing, there's another paper from the administration on abolition of district council appointed seats. This is to consult members' views. So, over to the Secretary for introduction, and then I'll ask members to raise questions. Mr. Tam, I'll be brief because the relevant contents are already set out in the papers. I just want to highlight a few points. With regard to Mainland and Taiwan affairs, there will be another briefing in the CIP meeting. There's another paper today on the abolition of appointed DC seats. Earlier on, we already gave a briefing to members. Today's paper is mainly to recap what we are going to do within the first quarter. We're going to formally table a bill in this council for scrutiny. The legislative approach will be a direct one, and that is we are going to delete all references in the District Council ordinance to the appointed seats. Furthermore, there will be some other consequential amendments in other regulations. The timetable, as you said, it will be there will be a bill to be tabled next month or by March, the latest. Further views from members will be most welcome. And also for the fifth term of DCs and the number of seats. Very soon we are going to review the number of seats in the fifth term of DCs in 2015. We're going to look at the census data to decide on the number of seats. After we have got the findings, we'll come back to the panel to consult members. Constitutional development. The CE told members last week that at an appropriate juncture, the mechanism will be triggered. All I want to say is that we would make sure that there will be sufficient time to go through the legislative process and also to consult the general public. At our last panel meeting, the EAC, Electoral Affairs Commission, makes some suggestions concerning LegCo elections. And there were some other elections prior to that. For all these issues, we have made some proposals to make improvements, in particular issues related to the publicity. We are going to brief members in the future on details. People of different sexual orientation. In the new year, we are going to devote more resources to this area. And there are a few areas to work on. We are going to provide funding to relevant organizations to organize activities to support equal opportunities for people of different sexual orientation. So more resources will be provided to sponsor interested organizations in organizing such activities. There will be a new API on the promotion of equal opportunities for people of different sexual orientation. And there is also going to be another round of publicity regarding the code of practice against discrimination in employment on the ground of sexual orientation. We're going to talk to the different organizations about this. Also, to understand the discrimination faced by people of different sexual orientation, we arrange to undertake certain research and study to provide an updated, comprehensive, and objective basis on which to plan our future anti-discrimination work. We're also going to strengthen liaison with stakeholders to understand the problems that they face. And we're also going to have more frequent meeting of the forum on equal opportunities for people of different sexual orientation. There are some new organizations which we would like to take on board in the forum, and we hope to be able to brief members further shortly. As for the other areas such as children's rights, racial equality, relevant contents are already set out in the paper. I'm happy to take questions from members. Lastly, concerning personal data privacy, there's another item on the agenda today, so perhaps we can take up those issues at that point. So I'll just pause here. I'm happy to take members' questions. All right, 11 members have raised their hands. Let's see if I have omitted any one of you, or 12 rather. This is the order. Kenneth Chan, Starry Lee, Wong Kok Heng, Gloria Mao, Chen Jichun, Leung Kok Hong, Raymond Wong, Sin Chung Gai, Emily Lau, Lei Chok Yan, Sid Ho, Yu Si Wing, and Helena Wong. Well, there are quite a few of members who would like to speak. We'd like to wrap up by 3:40, so 4 minutes for each member. Mr. Kenneth Chan, or Dr. Kenneth Chan. Well, this panel meeting is supposedly to be about the CMAB's work in the coming year. But having read the paper, it seems that it's rather vague. I wonder if they're overstaffed. I wonder if the Bureau is overstaffed. We have come to a point that one wonders what's the need for so many people. You say that at the appropriate time, a constitutional development will be put on the agenda, on the list. The appropriate time is now. So the question is, what do you mean by appropriate time? Second, reform of DCs. So at long last, you are willing to abolish appointed seats. And after the last discussion in 2006, nothing has been done. Many people have asked more to be done. You're now giving them 100 million each. What about the ex officio seats? Is the Bureau ready to come back to brief us on all these issues? And also racial minority. If you read SCMP's report yesterday, well, these people are shaking their heads in disappointment. And we have to involve the Education Bureau, CMAB, of course, and also HAB. So I would like to know whether the CMAB would be able to come up with a comprehensive strategy to promote the interests and the well-being of racial minorities. And also in your statutory and advisory bodies, would there be a quota for for racial minorities like the one for women, so as to enhance their participation in community affairs? Secretary, concerning the timetable for constitutional development, as we know, the MPCSC made a decision in 2007 that in 2017 is going to be the introduction of universal suffrage, and we all know the timetable, and we did some consultation. From now to 2016 or 2017. There's still time to complete all the consultations necessary and also the legislative processes. We haven't got a firm timetable to trigger the so-called 5-step mechanism. Our Bureau will be doing some advanced preparation. So you're asking the Undersecretary to do the compilation of information and preparation for you? Please let the Secretary answer. As for the functions of the DC, well, it's under the purview of the HAB. CMAB is responsible for elections. I've already given an account on appointed seats. And of course, the number of DC seats will be handled at the next stage. because of demographic changes, we need to set a new number, and also we need to redraw on the boundaries. Regarding ex officio seats, as I said last time, during the consultation, divergent views were received. This time, in the bill we table for member scrutiny will be on appointed seats. If there's a need to handle ex officio DC seats, it will be in the next stage. Different bureaus are responsible for the different issues regarding racial equality. We are responsible for the policy on racial equality, and we will make sure that sufficient funding is provided to the EOC, and resources will be accounted for in the budget. Under the ordinance, there is also administrative guidelines on racial equality. 13 government departments and statutory bodies would be covered by the guidelines. In due course, we are going to cover another 8, including the housing department, the observatory, the legal aid department, the police, the immigration department, and so on. This is the next step in promoting the coverage or extending the coverage. Mr. Lee. Number 2 is about the review on the number of elected seats for the 5th term of DCs. Understand the relevant factors would be considered, such as a projection of demographic data. What about boundaries? In the past, sometimes it was not reasonable. A small estate or village will be carved up into different parts. And many DC members are of the view that these are not drawn up with a lot of careful thought. Are you going to review this and also take on board the comments made by relevant parties? As for people of different sexual orientation and the review, I've received their representations. You have a committee under you to work on the elimination of discrimination. The complaint is that the committee is not doing a follow-up job. So can you look into the work of the committee to see what can be improved? Also, in paragraph 11, it said that you want to better understand the discrimination now faced by people of different sexual orientation, and you're going to arrange to undertake relevant study or research. So apart from Hong Kong, I hope you will look at other countries, particularly those with laws on sexual orientation, and learn about the controversies they face. You know that the president tried to allow more flexibility for in relation to marriage of homosexuals, and it caused a lot of controversies.
Mr. Chairman, concerning the elected seats, we'll look at the size of the population to see whether we should increase on top of the 400 odd at the moment. As our population is ever growing, we'll see whether the ratio should be increased. All along, we've been using the population quota of 17,200 people, if I remember correctly, as the base figure. The next step is to go to the EAC, which will, based on a number of factors in delineating the constituencies, including population, community conditions, network conditions, etc. And I did observe that blocks A, B of an estate may belong to one constituency and block C, D to another. That's rather strange. So in future, the demarcation of constituencies will be based on a number of factors. As regards persons of different sexual orientation, as I said in my opening remarks, in future we'll have a number of tasks to complete. Overseas examples were mentioned just now, and we've started to study the laws and administrative measures of other jurisdictions in relation to people of different sexual orientation. We've already started these studies. Just now, I mentioned local research projects only. And through these research projects, we'll be able to gauge the exact situation in Hong Kong so that we can have targeted initiatives. We may have to legislate or do publicity and education. All these are being planned. I personally will examine whether or not it should be our bureau doing the job or whether we should commission other organizations like the Equal Opportunities Commission to do the job. So we'll have to do some planning. And as I said in my opening remarks, we'll continue to enhance our publicity and education. Well, Secretary, will you review the terms of reference of the working group? Now, we do have a forum for sexual minorities. In our bureau, we also have a unit that is responsible for equal opportunities and sexual orientation funding. So we'll see whether we can restructure all these tasks. I can go back and look into it. Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions for the administration. The first question is, your bureau is responsible for political development and constitutional development. Has the administration considered conducting any studies on legislation on political parties? This is essential in our constitutional development. If we have a party law, members of the public can abide by that piece of legislation and be regulated. That will be conducive to the healthy development of our political development. That is, of course, one area of consideration. I understand that nothing is mentioned in the policy address about this. So has the administration noted this phenomenon? And secondly, concerning the roles and functions of the district councils and their review, you said that that's under the portfolio of the Home Affairs Bureau. I do not agree. Originally, you're responsible for constitutional development. The Home Affairs Bureau governs the district councils, but the number of district councils, the abolition of appointed seats of district councils, etc., should be covered by constitutional development. Back then, the two municipal councils were abolished, and the administration undertook to expand the roles and functions of the district councils. Over a decade has elapsed. Nothing has been implemented. At that time, we proposed one municipal council and one municipal services department for easy monitoring. Of course, we welcome your proposal to abolish the appointed seats of the district councils. You are to increase the number of DC seats. So how can you refrain from reviewing the roles and functions of district councils? So you should review the roles and functions of the DCs so as to implement the undertaking given by the administration when it proposed to abolish the two municipal councils. Secretary, first of all, about a party law, I noted that this is actually in the list of outstanding items of the panel. Back then, my predecessor and the then SARG responded that Hong Kong was in an initial stage of party politics, so overregulation may not be conducive to party politics. And then we resorted to other means. For example, $10 per vote, which was slightly increased. So that's a kind of assistance. At present, the Bureau and the administration does not have any plan to study whether or not to pass a party law. Well, if the LegCo decides to revive the issue, we can go back and examine it. But at the moment, we don't have such a plan. Mr. Chairman, just 10 more seconds. We are progressing towards universal suffrage. So you must have a party law which should be a cornerstone of universal suffrage. Secretary, well, if the panel would like us to follow up, we're willing to obey. Well, in paragraph 191 of the policy address, it is mentioned that the administration will conduct a review on district councils which are to play a role in constitutional development. Internally, when we discussed reform of district administration, I believe my colleagues will have appropriate participation in the whole process. So I'll offer analyses and advice to the Home Affairs Bureau. That can be done. Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a member of the panel. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. For racial equality, they're talking about administrative guidelines, not a piece of legislation. Well, eventually that guidelines was extended to another 8 departments, including police, legal aid department, housing department. These are very appropriate. But I noted that the Hong Kong Observatory was only included lately. Why? Why is it that the Hong Kong Observatory was not included in the past, but just recently? Well, but that's not my question. Here, I'd like to mainly express my views on the stalking law. And you continue to say that any person who is engaged in a series of acts who cause fear and disturbance on another person, it will commit an offense. You can imagine that if a mother urges a child to do its homework and the child says that he is very afraid, and if a teacher does the same on the child, can the child claims that he is subject to stalking? I really don't understand why stalking should come under the panel on constitutional affairs. Well, Chairman, you emphasize corresponding bureaus and departments. CPU is not under the portfolio of Mr. Tam, the Secretary. But party law is related to constitutional development. I really don't understand why the stalking law should be related to this panel. Now, on the mainland, they do have laws to protect the children. And now you want to have a law to protect the women. Now here you mentioned 2 legal professional bodies, blah, blah, blah. You do not name names, but you mention women organizations. You do not mention at all the institution of journalists. The Hong Kong Journalists Association. And you see at present, many boys just chase after girls. They just chase the girls. You want to take reference from overseas experience. In overseas jurisdictions, they have laws about under-the-skirt photography, stalking, etc. But we cannot model totally on overseas jurisdictions. Overseas jurisdictions do not distort the law. They won't have a goddess of democracy incident. But in Hong Kong, laws are distorted. You mentioned stakeholders. Does that term cover journalists' association and members of the media? And you mentioned an appropriate way forward. Do you have any timetable? Any terms of reference? Secretary, well, the worries raised by Ms. Claudia Mo were actually received during the consultation period. In the first phase consultation exercise, we listed the Journalists Association's views in our report, and we did listen to panel members' views. In terms of stalking, in future, if we are to legislate, how should we handle media's worries? Well, we would like to conduct another study, particularly on overseas laws and social experience in overseas jurisdictions. We have to balance press freedom and privacy. We have to strike a balance. How did overseas jurisdictions go about it? So we'll conduct another research. The main controversy is if an option can take into account the media's worries and attain our objectives for legislating on stalking, that is, to protect the subjects of stalking, like women and debtors. I believe we have to come to the panel again to listen to your views. And for this further study, if possible, if my colleagues can work harder, there is a chance for me to come back before the end of the year to this panel. So we'll see whether the media should be carved out or be exempted and be given more room for maneuvering, and we'll take reference from overseas jurisdictions. With 13 members are queuing up for questioning, so I'll grasp our time better. So please do not ask long questions. Mr. Chen Chi-chun, first of all, I have to thank Mr. Raymond Tam for his concern in his paper, a 7-page paper with 3 paragraphs, paragraphs 9 to 11, on persons of different sexual orientation. I'm worried that members may say that Mr. Tam favors the subject more than constitutional development. But in fact, he was only copying paragraph 131 of the policy address, except for one sentence. Maybe he thought that that sentence was meaningless. That is, for the time being, there's no plan for consultation. So what does he mean there? No intention to do consultation within this year or within the term of CY Leung. He always mentioned increased resources, enhanced publicity and education. All right, increase the resources. By how much then? What about the percentage of increase? And for education and publicity, it's really a big problem. You performed very poorly. You have to search your soul in depth to see what mistakes you've made. During the question and answer session of the CE, Ms. Sito asked a very absurd question, and CY Leung said that he did not know. So, Secretary, you should go back and educate CY Leung first. He cannot blame the public as a CE. He does not know the answer. A 30-second API on washing hands, crossing the road, etc. is all right. But it's highly difficult if you want to change people's values. Highly difficult. If the Bureau does not know how to do it, it should seek help from other organizations or outsource the job. As for listening to the views of different stakeholders, the administration will take the lead to implement the guidelines on against code of practice against discrimination in employment on the ground of sexual orientation. The government should take the lead to do so first. The administration does not perform well. Last week we discussed family violence. Some members wanted to join the working group, but the Social Welfare Department rejected it. You don't know how to do it, but you prevent people from participating. And all along you say you want to listen to public views. What sort of attitude is that? You should display sincerity. Mr. Tam, I think maybe you have been cheated by somebody else as well. So you have to show us your sincerity.
最關心嘅。其實
I know Mr. Chan is very concerned about consultation. In the past, my colleagues and I did discuss this. But I have to underline the words at present. At present, we have no plan to conduct consultation. I'm not saying that within this term there will be no consultation. I can only say at this stage we are going to embark on a series of activities, including the study and research. We'll look at overseas experience, especially their legislation, the contents, the social concern, and how the government addresses those concerns. On the local side, there have been some surveys. According to the EOC survey, people of different sexual orientation are harassed or discriminated against in the workplace. We'd like to get hold of more information and data so that we can respond properly. And if in the next stage we want to step up our efforts, including considering the introduction of legislation, we would like to have a firmer foundation to work on. So we'll look at this in the study and research. And we can start very soon. When there are findings, further findings arising from this, we would come back to this panel to discuss with members the next stage. I asked a very specific question: how much more resources will be put into this? Can you give us a short answer? We hope that in the context of budget discussion, we can give you concrete specifics, concrete data. That's because of the fiscal discipline. We can only talk about the specifics on that occasion. So I hope Mr. Chan would agree that we can leave this until next month. Mr. Leung Ko-hong, in 2010, Mr. Raymond Wong and I conducted the 5-district de facto referendum. I quoted a poem from Mr. Wang Anshi. And now I see a familiar face. Well, would you please talk about the policy address? Well, you're wavering like a weed. Have you finished? Well, the characters are in big size. It's easy to read. I know I learned that Mr. Tam wants talent very much, and he would like to take on Mr. Lau for a long time. Please return to the policy address. I want to hold him accountable. Mr. Tam, when did you try to engage Mr. Lau Kong-wah? Before or after the election? How come you knew that he will lose his election? Well, this is the right forum to make him accountable, but we're talking about the policy address. Well, I want to know why he want to engage this person to brief us on the policy address. We enjoy different rights: legislative rights, right to move motions, right to make proposals. So, Mr. Tam, when did you approach him? Well, I want the secretary to be accountable. He knows why Mr. Lau is here. It seems that you were informed that you wanted to attract talent to work for you. Are you going to answer this question? Mr. Wong, I will handle this issue myself. He's now taking his undersecretary here, so I ask when. That's a very normal question. We are talking about the policy address. I know. So I asked the secretary why he could manage to find such a nice and outstanding person to accompany him. Well, the secretary may or may not like to answer, or you may want to meet evicted. Let me just say that this is about the policy address. 4 or 5 years ago, when I was the Undersecretary, I also had to take part in the discussion of the policy address. So Mr. Lau is the Undersecretary today. How come you knew well in advance that he would be available? When did you approach him? April? October? I don't think this question is appropriate here. Did you write that statement, or you sacrifice yourself in having the announcement published? You are not talking about the policy address. I've given you all the time you are entitled to. All right, if you don't want to answer, so be it. I can't have you held accountable here. Mr. LegCo Hong asked whether Mr. Tam would kick you out of this meeting. Well, he can't, but Mr. Tam Yiu-chung will be able to do this after the rules of procedures are amended. Mr. Tam, I think your bureau should be eliminated. That is to say, we want to get rid of your bureau. We shouldn't give you a dime, not even a dime. So in the budget debate, we are going to propose the elimination of your bureau. What are you doing? You are not doing anything about human rights. The stalking law is under the purview of the LLC, not you. Constitutional development, nothing is going to happen. In 2016, we're going to have the next LegCo election. We need to pass the law on the constitutional development in 2015. Now it's 2013, and we don't have anything, not a little bit. Even if we follow the decision of the MPCSC, that's why they supported the reform in 2012. That's why the Pan-Democrats would continue to negotiate on that basis. So nothing has been proposed. And you are now following Mr. 689. You answer our questions in barely a few words, just like what the CE said in response to Miss Emily Lau's question. We're asking for consultation with regard to different sexual orientation, and you have no plan to conduct consultation, citing lack of consensus. That's illogical, precisely because there's no consensus that you need to consult people. If you don't want to do any consultation, it means there is consensus. You should proceed to legislation. Well, continue. Well, you can use up all the 4 minutes you have. The appointed seats of DC will be only abolished in the next term, and you are going to amend the law in the first quarter. Well, don't you have to consult us? There will be the need to redraw the boundaries and assign a new number of seats. So your bureaus should be dismantled. What about the ex-officio seats of NT-DCs? We have ample time, according to Mr. 689, but you have very little time left. He has very little time left, so is you, not Mr. Junking you. If Mr. 689 has very little time to go, so is you. You are here to have a hearing. There's no need to have this meeting. There are only just a few lines in the policy address, and you are wasting our time, all our time. So in a nutshell, we should dismantle the CMAB. If there are not so many pro-government loyalists here, the Bureau should have been eliminated earlier. All right, so your time is up. In the last term, we talked about passing a resolution in 2010, and then local legislation will be enacted, because that was mainly about the reform for 2012. The last term of government started consultation sometime in 2008. More than a year or so was spent on consultation, and last it was rushed through, so it took 2 years from start to end, and now it's 2013. Your policy address says that the bill on the abolition of the DC appointed seats will be done in the first quarter this year, but there's no timetable for consultation. I don't know what's in your mind. We're going to handle two things, 2016, 2017, and 2020. That is to say, the ultimate model for universal suffrage in relation to LegCo elections in 2020. Last time we spent 2 years. The resolution was passed in 2010. So it was a very tight timetable back then. If we want to deal with the CE election, we need more time. And with the resolution passed in 2014, we need 2 sets of law. One on the universal suffrage for the election of the CE. Now it's returned by a small election committee of 1,200 members. So if we want to go for universal suffrage, there are a number of issues. How to nominate candidates, 1 round or 2 rounds of voting. Is there going to be any vetting, any particular threshold for nomination? So we need to handle all these issues so that the Bills Committee can handle the issue more smoothly. So it's much more complicated than what it was back in 2010, because back then it was only on one issue, the midterm reform for LegCo election. This time it's about the introduction of universal suffrage for CE election. So, Mr. Tam, what do you think will be the time required to work out a resolution? And with the resolution, how much more time would be needed for LegCo to scrutinize the bill, and how much time would you be required to draft the bill? How much time? How many months would you need? Well, if we look at the experience in 2010, of course, at that time, to work out the electoral laws, time was required to work out local legislation.
To cite an example, assuming that we're to have universal suffrage for the CE election in 2017, then, of course, the next election will be in March 2016, and the nomination committee has to be formed. If the composition of the nomination committee is just like what the NPCSC said, should model on the composition of the election committee, we may still have to register the nominees. So voter registration for 2017 has to be held in May and July respectively for the provisional register and the final register. Now that's the latest timetable. And of course the EAC will have to demarcate the constituencies, enact subsidiary legislation, etc. At the level of local legislation, members know about what time frame we're talking about. One thing is absent from the existing legislation, and there are possible changes. That is, in politics and in the legislature, we need to form a consensus and canvass sufficient votes. That's the only uncertainty at the moment. Basing on my experience in the last 2 terms, although the CE says that there's no concrete timetable yet, and the timetable will be announced in an appropriate time, we still have to reserve sufficient time for local legislation, local consultation, constitution demarcation, voter registration, etc. And if you work back according to the schedule, from formal consultation to voting in LegCo, it will take roughly 9 months, according to our experience in 2010. So the past experience is for reference only. We don't know what will happen in future. Next, Ms. Emily Lau. Mr. Chairman, in fact, he should have said those remarks in his opening remarks. All the procedures and time frame should be set out. I think he is being irresponsible, and he is still claiming that there will be sufficient time. Now, for people of different sexual orientation and discrimination against them, we should legislate as soon as possible. Even the EOC has supported legislation. I don't know why Mr. Lam Kun Kwong doesn't come out to scold you. Well, the secretary was speaking very rapidly. He said that the nomination committee will be formed by the end of 2016 for the CE election. For LegCo, all of us will step down by then, and another LegCo election will be held in 2016. Are there going to be 2 elections at the same time? When will the relevant electoral laws be enacted? If you work back, you'll see there's not sufficient time. Some pro-establishment members have already said that they're going to block us, and were asked to reach consensus while differences can remain. Now, the whole exercise should be triggered immediately. A report should be submitted to Beijing. Even Donald Tsang's report said that most members of the public support universal suffrage. When Mr. Lau Kong-wai is here, I would like to know what role he's playing. Well, Mr. Chairman, you know that he was in great conflict with many of us. If he is engaged in this, he will meet with a great deal of difficulty, and the whole process may not be efficient. Well, I've heard members' views. For constitutional reform, I have nothing to add. Well, if we are to have the 2016 LegCo election, please work back and tell us how much time you have to work. Secretary, well, just now I mapped out the rough timetable for the 2016 election that will be held in September, and then in May and July there will be voter registration. As for the tasks before that, constituency demarcation, whether or not the electorate will have any change, as with no concrete details, we won't be able to assume what steps will have to be completed before that. And when I answered Mr. Leung Kwok-hong's question, I already said that since Mr. Lau Kong-wai is now my assistant as Undersecretary, he is to assist in all affairs in the Bureau. In the past, Mr. Lau had contacted members from different political parties and exchanged views with them. I believe he'll continue to work hard in that regard. Ms. Emily Lau, can we ask the Undersecretary to say something? How does he plan to cooperate with us in future? Undersecretary, I'd like to thank Ms. Lau for her reminder. My role is to assist the Secretary in all his work. I very much understand that for constitutional development and democratic advancement, they are very important to Hong Kong. understand that in the LegCo, colleagues from different political parties may have different political views, but for these two elections, synergy will be very important. So in the days to come, I'll assist the Secretary to communicate with friends from all sectors of the community, including LegCo colleagues. Mr. Chairman, will the Undersecretary say something similar to what he said in one of our debates? He stood up and shouted loudly that he would not give in even for an inch. In future, I'll communicate with everybody, including Ms. Lau. Mr. Chairman, here I have to affirm the strength of the civil society. Otherwise, this piece of legislation on equal opportunities would have vanished already. And now in the policy address, we have 3 paragraphs. But there are no concrete undertakings. No concrete undertakings. Well, Secretary, you mentioned APIs. What are the contents of the APIs? Can you tell in the APIs that parents opposing homosexual marriage will not commit an offense? Will the CE spent 3 seconds on the topic, then he could stop such discrimination from deteriorating. So, Secretary, in your API, would you please, in concrete terms, clarify misunderstandings and distortions which have led to panic? Then you'll be doing a good thing. And of course, for the policy initiatives, they're not concrete. Let me refer to the policy initiatives in 1998, the policy agenda. The SARG would adopt a new approach to introduce its policies and initiatives for implementation. The objectives announced in the 1997 policy address are procedure-based in order to attain effectiveness. So, effectiveness has to be measured. The policy agenda, effectiveness, concrete details, as well as indicators for assessing objectiveness had to be formulated. At least in form and style, you should be held accountable. But you see, in this leaflet, in 1998, we had 37 of them. Now, what have these become? 3 sheets of paper for each policy bureau. No timetable, no figures. But in 1997-98, we have concrete details. 1 out of 4 persons will receive higher education. Before September 1999, at least 40% of the teachers would be qualified, and it would be increased to 60%. Constitutional reform, district-based electoral methods would be formulated. What concrete details do we find in these 3 sheets of paper? What concrete timetable is there for us to see? You have been evasive, if not been accountable. All those things have vanished. Can the Secretary or the Bureau explain to us why such accountability documents have vanished, even in style and form? And all the policy agendas have now become 3 sheets of paper per bureau. They're so light that wind will blow them away. Secretary, well, I listened very carefully to the 2 examples cited by Mr. To. Prima facie, those 2 examples would not involve discrimination. So, Secretary, those 2 acts will not constitute an offense, right? Well, that's my personal opinion. Now, we are preparing the API. We've heard Mr. To. As for indicators, if you want a timetable, first, I did mention in my paper that in the first quarter of this year, in fact, I really want to introduce the bill to LegCo in February. As for the increase of the number of elected seats in district councils, I'd like to come to the panel in February. As for studies on people of different sexual orientation and overseas examples. I've already offered some explanation. I should elaborate on the code of practice against discrimination in employment. Together with the labor sector and trade organizations and chambers of commerce, we'll organize seminars, and through the Education Bureau, we'll also explain the content of the code of practice. Through various avenues, we would like to mention elimination of discrimination in workplaces. We would like to once again add strength to that exercise, and through our network do another round of work in the hope that at least for the time being we can attain certain effects. Mr. Yu Si-wing. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask the Secretary, during the last election of the LegCo, over 200,000 electors lost their voting right. Any remedy, Secretary? And then the publicity of the Basic Law is also very important. Under one country, two systems, members of the public should understand the Basic Law. Paragraphs 18 and 19 follow past practices. Will you consider research and studies so as to shed light on what approach we should adopt to promote the Basic Law? Secretary, I defer to the Permanent Secretary or the Deputy Secretary for the other question. But for the Basic Law, last year, after the DC election, as there were doubts and worries about vote rigging, after discussing with the LegCo, we proceeded to a rather stringent check. As I reported to you, altogether 210,000 electors were eliminated from the voters' register because of various reasons. Due to the investigation results of the ICAC, it's indicated that quite many of these electors had moved and had not updated their address with the REO. We tried very hard to identify these people or locate these people, but in vain. So under the law, their names had to be deleted. In future, for these 210,000 people or the unregistered persons or people who have yet to update their particulars with us, there will be a TV API to appeal to them to register and to update their addresses, etc. And there will be TV programs, short dramas on this. This year, well, in fact, we just printed these leaflets to remind members of the public to register as electors and to update their addresses. From February to May, in 4 batches, these leaflets will be distributed through the Water Supplies Department to 2.8 million consumers. These leaflets will serve as a reminder that electors who have not yet updated their address should update their address as soon as possible. Avenues are provided in the leaflet. There's also a hotline. So if an elector is eliminated purely because of updating of address, they should update their particulars with us again. Ms. Lee, Deputy Secretary, for the promotion of the Basic Law, we resort to 3 avenues. For the electronic media, they are more effective as a main publicity avenue. So apart from traditional electronic media, that is TV and radio programs, we also make more use of new media, like the Internet and smartphone applications. In our research studies, we discover that particularly for younger generations, mobile phone users obtain more information easily on the basic law.
Ms. Helena Wong, I don't think we can accept the part on constitutional development. I haven't heard any praise from members. So you're saying this is not yet the right time. And Mr. C.Y. Leung said that there will be ample time. Do you agree that there is ample time, Mr. Tam? If in the last round, the experience back in 2010, and if we applied that to 2017, if we work back, we need to start the local legislation process 2 years in advance. Are you going to handle 2016 and 2017 elections as a package? What about 2020? Even if we just follow the timetable decided by the NPCSC, will the administration enact the law to solve all the problems in one go? Can you tell us what do you mean by appropriate time? The public have to know what it means. Are you going to wait until there is a consensus and everything is settled before you start the 5 steps concern? And also, do we have to wait until Mr. C.Y. Leung has found a way that he will be elected as the next CE before you offer anything for suggestion? Or are you waiting for the answers from Beijing before you can say what is appropriate time? According to past experience, as I've said in answering other members, according to past experience, I hope we don't need to repeat the answers. Do we want to deal with 2016 and 2017 as a package? If we look at past experience, it was never dealt with as a package, but that's for consultation. What about the next time? Well, 2016 and 2017 is not that far apart. And I believe the community will be offering their views on both. For 2020, like last time, every term of government would deal with work falling under its purview for the term. So the current term of government will not trigger the mechanism for 2020. Just like last time, if some people have views to offer on this ultimate option, we are going to collate the information so that they would receive proper attention later. As for appropriate time, I cannot answer this question. I don't have any specific time to kickstart the process now. Are you saying that the Bureau or the SAR government has vetoed the approach of having one package to deal with 2016 and 2017 elections? In 2010, the Coalition on Universal Suffrage discussed with the liaison office, and it was the proposed option. The liaison office didn't rule that out. They said, the liaison office people said, it will be looked into. So is the Bureau saying that this is not going to be adopted? This is now discarded? Well, Chairman, we haven't ruled out anything. I just tried to explain the work procedure and the approach to be taken. Of course, there are different views. The Democratic Party proposed enacting an overarching legislation to provide a one-off solution. One-off legislation is proposed. You haven't ruled that out. We haven't ruled anything out. Ms. Ann Chang. I know that the number of DC seats will change next time. You are going to abolish appointed seats. Local personalities are very concerned about this. Political parties have to make preparation. and the earlier the better. We're talking about the 2016 election, so election will take place in latter part of 2015, and now it's already 2013. Not much time is left, and the political parties would like to make gains as far as possible. So don't make it too much of a rush. Otherwise, even if you manage to do it, it's not going to make people happy. For the new term of the DCs, are you going to learn from overseas experience or introduce more policies to encourage more women to be involved? We have more female voters than male voters. And in terms of population, women also outnumber men. But in our advisory and other political bodies, such as the DCs, women are underrepresented. So are you going to do something about this? And if you look at this council, we have only got 11 female councillors. And last time it was 11, this time it was 11. As a matter of proportion, it's even lower than the last term. And we have no one from functional constituencies. Well, Ms. Chen Yin-han and Ms. Starley are returned by DC 2nd FC, but it was a very arduous electioneering procedure that they went through. So, Mr. Tam, how are you going to increase the representation of women? Of wearing my old hat as head of the CE office, I was responsible for the consultation on ASB representation. There was an internal indicator. We wanted to achieve 30% for women, but we haven't achieved that. It's 20-odd% now. Last time, the difficulty we encounter is to find women from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and there weren't many channels to find the right number of women so as to make up the 30%. I hope LegCo members, especially female members, would offer suggestions. We're willing to take up your suggestions to enhance participation by women. Well, we have made our suggestions previously. In the district, women have to take care of the children. They cannot have the time to participate. So perhaps you could provide more nursing services. But it's not even mentioned in the policy address. We've been talking about this for years. I think this represents that there is discrimination against women by men. That's just a comment. Ms. Chen Yun-han. I think the focus as far as DCs are concerned is the abolition of elected seats. Of course, this is going to be welcomed by the community. As for the drawing of the constituency boundaries and the number of elected seats, well, it's going to happen in 2015. You must make good preparation and let us have further details in good time. In answering Mr. Wong Kok Heng's question, you said, it said that there was a paper from the administration. In tabling the bill, the government gave us this paper. There was a pledge to strengthen the roles and functions of DCs, especially DCs who will confer administrative powers. So that's the viewpoint reflected in C.Y. Leung's policy address, but nothing specific has been proposed. The DCs have strong views about this. When the municipal councils were scrapped, you promised to LegCo members that the municipal council's powers will be transferred to the DCs, but that has not been done. And you also haven't made any proposal. You can say that these DCs are under HAB, but constitutional development is your job. The 18 district councils have been waiting for something that would point to the future direction. If we wait another 1 year or so, the focus will be on the drawing of boundaries and other issues and elections. And we will have to wait even longer. Mr. Tam, can you address these issues? Because the DCs do have strong views about this. Concerning the number of seats, we have, not recently, we are dealing with the latest population projections from the planning department. As I've mentioned, we are going to come back to brief members on the number of elected seats, the increases and decreases of seats for various DCs. I hope we can come back in April or May to this panel. And then after the numbers are worked out, the EAC would consult the public. For example, let's say we have this number of new seats created, and then how should we draw the constituency boundaries? That would be the subject of consultation. Well, I agree there's a constitutional development angle following the abolition of the 2 municipal councils in 1999. We have an internal mechanism within the government and for which we will be able to participate. Well, this is interrelated. When the municipal councils were abolished, well, of course, there were strengths and weaknesses with the municipal councils. And then you have not make any progress. You need to respond to that. And now Mr. C.Y. Leung wants to enhance DC's functions, and also the certain new functions will be taken up by the district officers. The CMAB is also responsible, in my view, and you don't have a lot of time. I'm not talking about my personal views. These views have been in circulation in the DCs. You don't even have a timetable. People are at a complete loss as to what would happen. Ms. Priscilla Leung, I hope the Bureau would continue to follow up on the voting right of Hong Kong residents residing on the mainland, and also the irregularities in elections. ICAC and the EAC should demarcate their duties more clearly. Otherwise, ICAC would be make you taken advantage of, and people would always take complaints to the ICAC. Turning to the question of legislating for equal opportunities for people of different sexual orientation, we must admit that this is controversial. Homosexual Act is not illegal in Hong Kong. At present, you are also free to criticize Homosexual Act.
You see that both parties have adopted a very high profile in expressing their views. I know many friends on both sides. Just now, most members were talking about how homosexuals are being discriminated against. In fact, scholars and the entertainment sector have expressed their views. You're not legislating, But even during consultation, they dare not air their views, otherwise they'll be attacked or insulted by words. I must say that not all EOC members are like this, but Mr. Lam Wun-kwong personally said that those who are against are acting against their collective conscience. So your opinion poll may not be impartial enough. As for discussion and APIs, yes, you can do them, but then in your APIs, you should advocate for mutual respect, including respecting the freedom of expression of those who object to homosexuality. However, in society, it's a one-way exercise. There are still a lot of discriminatory acts. So for both sides, you should ask them to respect each other. They should not scold one another. They're now divided. This is very different from disability discrimination, because almost nobody objects to acting against or combating disability discrimination. In Paris, they had a protest by 800,000 people. Now, if the issue is still not resolved, should they be attacking one another? I have to tell the Bureau this. Before you take the next step, in terms of publicity, you should, as far as possible, advocate for a harmonious society. Everybody has the freedom of expression. Is it that you must encourage people to consider a person who walks out of the closet? I don't think you should legislate, which means mandatory measures, and then more people will come out with mandatory measures. I had not imagined how many so many people would have come out on a Sunday. I had not imagined so many people come out in Paris, 800,000 of them. We should not just talk about religious viewpoints or otherwise. There should be peaceful discussion in society first. It must not be a mandatory exercise. Mr. Porte, with just a piece of opinion. Yesterday, together with a number of LegCo colleagues, I had the opportunity to attend a barrier-free activity on rehabilitation, and Mr. Zhang Tak-seng also attended. We were told that barrier-free accesses should be further improved for the disabled. If we cannot resolve barrier-free access, many other issues will remain unresolved. Secondly, many people say that we should promote the basic law. This is mentioned in the policy address and the paper today. But then just now we're looking at one another. The officials mentioned that Ms. Li Pui-si, that is Ms. Xiaoming Li, was asked to answer the question on behalf of the administration. Well, I'm not trying to offend anybody. In fact, after the handover, the administration has met with governance difficulties. This has something to do with the lack of understanding and knowledge of the concept of one country, two systems and the basic law. Why is it that after the handover, we've not been able to merge with the mainland? Rather, there's been enhanced hostility. It's because everybody has slighted the need for more understanding and knowledge. Secretary, you mentioned more resources for promotion. By how much? Well, every now and then, our advertisements or APIs would very shallowly introduce what the basic law and one country, two systems are. Well, children just expressed their support. The middle class, what about the understanding about the basic law? How much do they understand about the essence of one country, two systems? Let's not talk about national education. For the more knowledgeable and the more critical, Are you going to systematically explain to them the basic law and the concept of one country, two systems? When the basic law was introduced to us, Mr. Xu Chia-tun mentioned the concept of non-intervention on both sides. Now, we're concerned about universal values. For the younger generations, we expressly know that there are sensitive issues on the mainland. We did not handle them carefully. Rather, we created embarrassment for the mainland authorities. So who is damaging one country, two systems? We always criticize the Western District for stretching its hands too long into Hong Kong affairs. But have we respected the spirit of one country, two systems? I hope that the SARG will not pass the buck from one term to another. Every year, every term, we're discussing this. We send more resources and money are given to produce APIs. But will APIs remain superficial, one about something, another about another issue? Whether it's about anti-discrimination or protection of human rights? Should we have more subvention on various aspects? If it is not convenient for the administration to do it, can there be more subvention for the private sector to produce more in-depth APIs? If we don't do this well, if we don't rectify the culture, the way ahead will still be difficult, and some of us here will still be dealt with in an uncivilized manner. Well, how much money, Secretary? In the past 2 years, every year, we used about $16 million to do the relevant work. And for 2013-14, we'll wait and see how the budget next month will explain. Well, I think we should conclude our discussion on item 3 here. We're very much behind schedule. So thank you very much, Secretary, for attending. Item 4 on the agenda, update on the work of the Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data. Please invite the Commissioner to come in.
All
right. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Alan Chang, Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data, and his colleagues for attending this meeting. Sorry for keeping you waiting. I think we should grasp our time well. You've prepared a paper for us, and you told us that there would be a PowerPoint presentation. So over to you first. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I should briefly introduce to you the work of our office in 2012. Our workload has increased. For 2012, number of inquiries over 19,000 cases, a rise of 2% compared with 2011. And for the latter half of the year, we discovered that many queries were related to legislative amendments. Complaints in 2012, we received 1,213 cases. When compared with 2011, it's a slight drop. But in the past 2 years, there were increases. So overall speaking, the number of complaints is still on a rising trend. Among the complaints, 70% are related to the private sector and 13% related to government departments and public bodies. As for the nature of complaints, For the private sector, we can classify them into a few main categories. Well, the main organizations involved are financial institutions, telecommunications companies, and building management companies. Now, for the breakdowns, in 2012, most complaint cases are related to the use of personal particulars without consent, and then purpose and method of collecting particulars, security of particulars, direct marketing, and perusal or checking and perusal of particulars and requests for rectification. After receiving a complaint, we may not necessarily carry out an investigation. We accept or we receive complaints and follow up on them. At the same time, our office proactively carry out compliance checks. If there is suspected non-compliance, we'll inquire with the relevant bodies and request for rectification. And for 12 cases, we proactively conducted an investigation. This number has increased when compared with past years. As for follow-up action, in 2011-12, we issued 27 warnings, and among 192 cases, we issued warnings and advisories. As for execution notice, 11 of them. When compared with 2011, in 2012, we issued 8 investigation reports, same as in 2011. The frequency has very much increased. In the past, as you can see, for our office, from this chart, you can see that in the past, we published a few reports, but in recent years, we have been publishing over 10 reports every year. And then in 2011, there was a policy change for the non-compliant companies. We disclose their names. That's conducive to monitoring. As for prosecution, in 2011, we referred 15 cases to the police. That's in 2012. For the police to follow up in terms of criminal investigation and prosecution. In the same year, 2012, there were 2 prosecutions resulting in conviction. Again, the figure represents an increase when compared with past years. All right, legislative review, our major task in 2012. Starting from 2007, our office has been submitting proposals on legislative amendments. And after a few rounds of public consultation, and after the panel has studied the proposals in detail, the amendment bill was enacted on the 27th of June last year. As for the latter half of 2012, there was a great deal of promotion and publicity targeting enforcement of the new law. And to cope with the different demands of different persons, we've been doing publicity and promotion. For example, there are dedicated interviews with the media, 6 TV episodes and dramas, and there are also videos on our website. And we've also arranged talks, exchanges, leaflets, compliance leaflets, as well as seminars and learning courses. The details are explained in our website.
We have stepped up regulation of direct marketing activities. And on Tuesday last week, we issued some guidelines. And a leaflet has been published to inform the consumer of their rights. Again, also on Tuesday, we announced a new activity, a leaflet on the new legal assistance scheme. We set out in the leaflet on the criteria that we are going to use for vetting application for legal assistance and the form of legal assistance to be offered. And if an application is rejected, how can the applicant seek a review? Also on the legal assistance scheme, there are two further steps. If we are to provide legal advice to the applicant, we have to sort out whether we are protected under the issue of legal professional privilege. We need to clarify this. If we want to outsource the legal assistance exercise, then there's the need to provide necessary resources to the Commission. And if we are to assist the help seeker to go to a court according to the Bar Association, our in-house barristers do not have the right of audience. So we need to make other arrangements to assist the applicant. So we need to follow up with the administration to see if further legislative amendments should be initiated to make it more flexible for the PCPD to provide one-stop service. Next, I want to talk about the data user return scheme. This is a new initiative. We published a consultation document in July 2011. Under the document, we would like to cover 4 sectors. We hope that they would be able to provide data returns, such as public organizations, telecommunications, and another 2, such as banking and insurance. They express a lot of reservation, and we also found out that the EU was considering a review. In view of the reservation expressed by the relevant sectors, and also the fact that the EU is reviewing the system they have, we hope we can gain from their reviewed findings or learn something from their review. I would like to have this shelved for the time being. It doesn't mean that we are not going to do anything in the meantime. We have talked to the 4 trades, 4 sectors, that we should work out something called privacy management program, so that these sectors will put in place policies and measures to ensure that the best practice in data protection will be implemented. Next, operation or implementation of Section 33 of the ordinance. Well, this is in the ordinance, but this has not yet been implemented. To assist the administration to carry out a public consultation, we have engaged a consultant to look at the laws of our trading partners to see if they are similar to ours. If so, we would provide a list to the administration so that follow-up action can be taken in the public consultation. We would like to have this completed in the first quarter of 2013. On publicity, promotion, and education activities. I've already touched on promotion and education activities in relation to the amendment ordinance, so I won't repeat the same points. And also in 2012, there are two major activities. For the third year, we have launched the ambassador scheme for young people, the student ambassador program aimed at encouraging young people to learn more about the importance of personal data privacy. And there was also a seminar. We invited commissioners from Australia and New Zealand to take part. And there are also local experts and data officers who participated in the forum. And this is a chart on promotion and publicity. We have done more in the last year than previously, although our main activities is on investigation. So we have published more leaflets in the last year than previously. For public forums and workshops, we have also done more. But this is a new arrangement for people of different backgrounds to enhance professionals' understanding of the PDPO. And these professionals will be able to do a better job in data and privacy protection in their own fields. Next, 2013 program highlights. Well, I won't repeat this because it has already been fully elaborated. Thank you, Commissioner. The administration, we need to do some preparation to implement the remaining parts of the 2012 Amendment Ordinance. I'll invite the administration to say something before I open the floor for members to ask questions. Well, the Amendment Ordinance was passed by this Council in June. Most of the provisions were implemented in October. There are two remaining parts which are important, and that is the regulation of direct marketing and the use of personal data in direct marketing. And the second point is about the provision of the legal assistance scheme to seek compensation. The Secretary will implement these two parts of the Amendment Ordinance on the 1st of April. Apart from the promotion to be conducted by the PDPO, the administration will also produce APIs to ensure that the privacy can be better protected. 3 members would like to ask questions. We should have completed our meeting by 4:30. Now I would like to extend it by 15 minutes to up to 4:45. Ms. Charles Small, Ms. Sin Chung Kai, and Mr. Chen Kim-po, Mr. Paul Chair, and Ms. Emily Lau, who would like to ask questions. 4 minutes for each member. Mr. Charles Small. Well, for the number of enforcement notice, it has increased from 1 to 11 last year. Would you regard this as a deterioration of privacy protection? And we know that the police have got problems time and again with regard to Foxy software. Previously, they investigated their own cases. Would you be conducting your investigation as well, Privacy Commissioner? It seems that they are not able to sort out things on their own. And you have also exchanged information in 2012 with Google, and also to you got information from Google concerning their privacy guidelines. But there are other websites such as Facebook and Instagram which have had problems. There are big companies overseas. How come you follow up with some of them and not some others? And you are saying that you are getting a heavier workload. With the amendment ordinance implemented, that the workload is going to increase. Are you going to have more manpower? And what is your aspirations in terms of resources given to the PDPO? In 2012, there was a higher number of enforcement notice because of the amendment ordinance. Most of the provisions became effective in October, so we have been enjoying a higher degree of flexibility since then. In the past, we have to ascertain whether the offending act had come to a close and has stopped. Then we would not be empowered to issue enforcement notices if that was the case. And now with the amendment ordinance coming into effect, we do not have to take that into account, and we can issue enforcement notices. As for the leakage, the case of leaking personal data through Foxy, well, we have embarked on a formal investigation, but we are not in a position to disclose any information before the completion of the investigation. As for international internet service providers and what we can do in relation to offenses committed by them, well, most of these operators are not based in Hong Kong, so law enforcement is problematic for us. We have to depend on the regional or global solidarity of a privacy commissioner to embark on collective efforts to promote or to publicize certain materials. For example, we would highlight that the changes to Google's privacy policy can be problematic in that the users were not properly informed that their personal data will be amalgamated and sorted. Through our representation, Google has promised to make improvement. And Facebook is based in the U.S., so we depend a lot on our counterparty, our corresponding counterparty in the U.S. And on their part, they have imposed a fine on Facebook. And in the coming years, Facebook will be subject to external scrutiny to ensure compliance. Although we don't have any direct investigations, we are benefited by the action of other privacy commissioners. And in 2013, we will have to await government's further responses concerning increases of resources that we would like to get. At this point, we have difficulties. As of today, if you count the number of people, the head count is 79 in the PDPO. But the government only provides funding for 64 people. So there's a shortage of funding for 15 of our people. We are just deploying the funds from other sources to cover the shortfall. That would affect our capacity to conduct research and investigation. That's not ideal. We hope the administration will provide more resources to tie in with the increasing number and complexity of our work.
Mr. Sin-chung Kai, for slide 19 of your PowerPoint presentation and paragraph 19 of your paper, you say that you will use an IT system to replace a declaration or notification system for the time being. It's because 4 industries have strong opposition. It's paragraph 21, actually. I think you're talking about the views of data subjects rather than data users. Do you have any public opinion as foundation for making that decision? The office is giving in to the 4 industries, and you now have a privacy management system. And how is this different from the original data use scheme, the DERS? Will the European jurisdictions, the EU jurisdictions adopting a more stringent approach while you're using this privacy management system as a concession? Will the reputation of the office be tarnished? Did the office ask the members of the 4 industries, I mean not the stakeholders, but the individuals, what their views are about? This is not explained in your paper. Have you conducted an opinion poll? Do they support your declaration system? Why do you back down so soon? Commissioner, we've not conducted any comprehensive consultation exercise, but for human rights organizations as well as advocates for human rights, we did exchange views with them. For example, we had consulted the Consumer Council. I'd like to emphasize that we have not forgotten the scheme. For the EU, they're conducting a review in order to make improvements. So, if we are to adopt a system that is deemed problematic by the EU, we doubt whether it is appropriate. The European Union is to review their system. So we are waiting their review results so that we can absorb their experience and make better arrangements for Hong Kong. We don't have any vacuum at the moment. We just want a more comprehensive and useful system to replace a system that is due for review. Now, what are the differences between the 2 systems? The declaration system is a rather mechanical system. Our office will notify the party involved what particulars have to be furnished and what particulars have been collected by a company. What are the uses of those particulars? Will the particulars be passed to third parties? What about a person leaving Hong Kong? Well, we're talking about these parties who have grasped certain information. Is it difficult for them to submit certain information to us? Because if the information submitted carries errors, criminal liability may be involved. So, what will be the extra benefit to consumers? May not be huge benefit. So we're talking about a comprehensive approach. We're not asking certain parties to furnish information that's already available on their websites. We want a high-level undertaking to protect privacy particulars, be it a small department or a new product or a manufacturing process. Privacy particulars have to be protected. We must have a review system. There must be a top-bottom monitoring system to enforce the protection of privacy particulars. Now, this is not a requirement in law, but every time when our office carry out a check, we'll see whether the company concerned has the proper procedures in place. Now, if we're talking about single incidents, then of course after the incidents are rectified, there won't be any more problem. But what we want the companies to do is that they should guard against future recurrence, because a more perfect preventive system is put in place. Mr. Chan Kim-po, days ago, I asked a question in LegCo about internet bullying. The office received 4 complaints about offensive language and pictures or photos on the internet. Now, for the office, it's so common a phenomenon. Why 4 complaints in 5 years only? Is it that the office failed to do enough? Will the office contemplate legislative amendments to guard against unscrupulous disclosure of privacy particulars? And the Commissioner also published the incident that 8,000 odd students' particulars, including names, parents' names, addresses, user ID and passwords, etc., have been disclosed. School should be a place to learn privacy, but such privacy particulars have been leaked, so any solution from the office. Commissioner, internet bullying may not be a dedicated subject of concern for us, because bullying can be carried out through a number of media. Well, personal particulars may be involved, of course, in certain cases. Well, I think basically we're not a very appropriate avenue for complaint. For internet bullying, the most difficult thing is to trace the source. The complainant may feel that he is bullied on the net, but he cannot tell us what the source is, who is bullying him over the net. Virtual bullying is most difficult to follow up on. And if criminal offenses are involved, it may be more appropriate to complain to the police, because the police can carry out criminal investigation and do genuine tracing work on the net to see who has been issuing, say, personal intimidation messages. For our office, we may not be very representative in this regard, and we may not be a very good avenue for complaint. Recently, we published for the educational institutions a negligence case in which students' particulars were disclosed. Mr. Chan also mentioned that incident, which is worthy of our concern. We asked the same question, and the focus of our investigation is, of course, the educational institution. But this happens also in commercial institutions, just that the severity may not be that much. So we did not introduce those cases on our website. I hope that after that incident, will be more alerted to this phenomenon. That is, parties concerned should review their operations to see whether certain particulars or personal data will be leaked on the net. We've spared no effort in protecting privacy and personal data. For a consecutive third year, we're launching the Students' Ambassador Scheme in order to enhance students' awareness of online offenses of this type and be able to better protect themselves. When human rights are understood more, in future, when students join companies, they will perform better in the protection of personal data. Next, Mr. Paul. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, may I refer you to the briefing in relation to the inquiry figures and complaint figures. Of course, the inquiry figures far outnumber the complaint cases. Well, what steps will be involved when an inquiry becomes a complaint? I just want to know the operational process in your office, so as to indicate whether or not you have sufficient manpower and whether manpower has been mobilized appropriately. As for advisories, 192 in 2012, far more than other approaches. Well, mediation and consultation are the most common approaches at the moment. Well, did you ask the persons who put forth inquiries or complaints, what do they think about your coordination work and investigation work? And Mr. Sin-chung Kai mentioned the shelving of the data user return scheme. From the paper, it's not very clear whether the EU intends to further tighten their laws or consider their laws too stringent. That's why they would like a review. And now this privacy management system, is it a temporary measure or is it a relaxed approach? Commissioner, well, very often the person who put forth an inquiry would like to understand more certain particulars or their own situation. As for complaints, we seriously handle them. There is a process to define a particular case. Well, the complainant must not be anonymous. The complainant must introduce himself clearly. And the complainee should be also very clear. Is it person A, person B, or company C? And in that process, we may have to assist the complainant. When it comes to a complaint, under the law, there's a stringent process for follow-up. The relevant person must assist us in tracing the relevant parties. Where is the line drawn between an inquiry and a complaint?
It depends on the person concerned, whether he wants to get something followed up. If he thinks he can deal with the matter himself, then that would be the end. Our professional staff will explain to the person concerned whether he wants to lodge a complaint. If it's a complaint, he has to tie in with our efforts by producing the records and documentations so that follow-up action can be taken. So there may be a few rounds of dealing with the person concerned. And we have to explain what it would mean if there's a complaint, and there is also action required on the part of the complainant. As for the data user return scheme, we are temporarily shelving this because the EU is conducting a review. To be on the safe side, we think we should wait. The EU is conducting the review for two reasons. The system has been in place for more than 10 years. Now it has become an exercise for documents just for the sake of getting documents without really benefiting the consumer. And a lot of importance is attached to the punctuality and accuracy of data or the return. So it has become a routine, and there's a question mark as regards to what extent the consumer is benefited. And for big corporations, say those with 250 employees or more, there's a mandatory requirement that the company would have to assign a data manager. And of course, the data manager is going to report to the CEO and also to the district privacy commissioner in the country. That's a very strict and stringent requirement. So what are we going to do in Hong Kong? I think we should wait until the review is completed. That will provide good reference to us. If members don't object, I would allow two more members to ask questions, and then we'll wrap up today's meeting. Ms. Emily Lau. When Ms. Zhang was appointed the privacy commissioner, we were worried because he was a former civil servant. We want the PDPO to protect people's privacy. And one of the things we hoped that they would be able to get would be sufficient resources. Remember, the last privacy commissioner, Mr. Ng Ban, was almost crying, and he said he would have to beg people to help him. According to the privacy commissioner, you have an establishment of 64 while you are employing 79 employees. I don't know where the money comes from. If you have a lot of money in your drawer, maybe the government would refuse to give you more. But at the same time, you have so many complaints or inquiries. Is it that because of lack of manpower, you cannot carry out all the investigations you have to investigate? Or are you trying to ask professionals to help you free? How can you keep these 15 people? Have you asked for more manpower? You have to be honest with us as regards the difficulties you face. Privacy Commissioner, yes, it's difficult, as I've said. It's by no means an easy task. I have shared with you the two figures. So you may ask, why can we employ 79 with an establishment of 64? Well, it really has to do with savings in the short term, but you cannot sustain this for the long term. For example, there was a question which I haven't answered, and that is the perception of our clients. We haven't conducted any survey on this for a long time. We have to do this year. As for long-term research and study, we cannot do it because we have to focus on the short term and cope with the workload. We also have a question of a backlog. How much cases are there in the backlog? Say, 3 years ago, we said we wanted 92% or more than 92% of the cases to be completed within 80 days. And now the percentage has dropped to 88%. And that is the time taken has become longer. This is not really desirable. Well, it's just a stopgap measure. In the long term, we hope the administration and the Bureau can give us more resources. Of course, we continue to ask professionals to help us. Our seminars and workshops are organized with the assistance of professionals, such as the IT professionals. We made the arrangement, but the speakers are the volunteers from these professionals. So I would like to get an answer from Mr. Lau Kwong-wah. You know there are problems. What are you going to do with them? Mr. Lau, thank you, Ms. Emily Lau, for your question. We understand, we fully understand the PVC Commissioner's problems with increasing workload and workload arising from the amendment ordinance, and there's a need to have more manpower. And that's why last year, or within this current financial year, we have provided more resources. If we count recurrent funding as well as one-off funding, we have provided additionally $10 million. And last time the increase was only $3.8 million. So the increase is a bigger one. And we are also seeing the longer term need for more resources. For the next financial year, we are waiting for the new budget. And when it's announced, we'll know how much more will be provided. In the meantime, we will liaise closely with the PVC Commissioner to get the job done. I just want to say that the administration should understand that the PVC Commissioner has a difficult task to carry out, and they are not asking for a lot of money. I hope you inform the CE that they must be given the necessary resources. Otherwise, people would have the impression that you are not serious about privacy protection. Next, Mr. Leung Kok-hong. I have a question for the Privacy Commissioner. You are suggesting that the EU system is better than ours, so there's a need to file a return, and then there's a dedicated commissioner to ensure compliance. This system has not yet been implemented in EU, right? With our amendment ordinance enacted. And this is the transitional period. You think EU system is better, so you just want to wait until you know what the system is going to look like. But that's one of the reasons. We would like to wait until the EU review is completed so that we can learn from their experience. And there are reasons why the EU has conducted this review. They are of the view that the returns system is more or less becoming a routine and not really benefiting the consumer. They are more concerned about the accuracy of data in the return. So they don't really know how much the consumer will be benefited. And since the system targets at big companies, bigger trades, so asking them to do this would not bring about a lot of benefits to the consumer. But on the other hand, the rules are very rigid. So we believe that in the interim, we should have a more comprehensive mechanism under which the higher management would be involved in ensuring that data privacy would be fully protected. Well, that's understood. If we draw the line at companies with 250 employees or more, and then there's a need to have a data protection officer assigned. Well, the EU system says that you have to employ someone to monitor yourself, otherwise you are not in compliance. So the EU is saying that there's no use in just conducting investigations. The big companies are supposed to hire someone to ensure compliance. It's just like the safety officers on construction sites. Previously, Commissioner. Well, that's one of the options under consideration by EU. But whether this is going to happen in Hong Kong, at this moment, I have reservation. I want to, first of all, know more about the EU system, and we may have our own system later on. For the big four industries, at first they said they would not object to the scheme, but they have doubts about the objective to be achieved. What are their doubts? Well, these are four big industries. What are their doubts? What are they saying? Do they think this is too strict or too lenient? Or should we just follow the EU system? Previously, Commissioner. Well, the response from local industries are reflected in the EU, and that is if there is a scheme for returns to be filed, and then the checking is about the data contained in the returns. It may become something just a routine, like a routine, and it's not really benefiting the consumer. I understand. It's just a paper. It's just a document. If you require just a return to be filed, you can be cheated. That's how CM Leung cheated us, because he was required to file a form. If you ask them to engage an officer, then apart from filing returns, the officer should be able to inform you of the compliance situation. Are you saying that the EU is of the position that by asking for returns, you are going to let some companies off the hook? And the point is how to ascertain the contents and that the contents are relevant. Well, if you file a return, then you have to look at the accuracy of the data. The industries have agreed to an interim arrangement. It's not just about filing returns. It's not about filing the returns. We want to have a top-down approach in privacy management. Well, so the four big industries and their top management will have the responsibility to have something proportional implemented. There will be an officer doing this on their behalf. That's the EU system, how the EU system works. Because if you just ask for a return, they will omit certain things, and it's not against the law. I understand where EU is going. Are we going to follow the same path? Well, generally speaking, yes. Okay, then I have no more question. And we can wrap up this item now. Item number 5, AOB. Nothing under AOB. The next meeting will be held on the 18th of February, a Monday at 2:30 p.m. Thank you all for coming to